boys and girls, it's Mrs. Pecora back to read you another chapter from our novel, Prince Puggly of Spud and the Kingdom of Spiff. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Chapter 7. The Irrefutable Facts. Out on the road to the Palace of Spiff, where it skirted the edge of a glittering cliff, a carriage approached. It trundled along, but something about it was just a bit wrong. Now, a Spiffian carriage was a beautiful thing. Its gilding and velvet were fit for a king. It was music in motion, refinement on wheels, more posh than the ritziest automobiles. Conversely, the carriage approaching that night was a pitiful, rather precarious sight. Who would ride in a carriage so rusty and old, so lacking in style, and with so little gold? Instead, it was painted with squiggles and blobs and higgly-piggly swishes and swabs. Who would come in a carriage so undignified, with a cabin like that, with horns on its side? That's right, it had horns. They stuck in the air, like the helmet a lopsided Viking would wear. Who would ride in a clunker that bumped on the ground, on wheels that were egg-shaped rather than round, with lights that were flashing electrical pink? Who was inside? Well, who do you think? Prince Puggly, of course. He was seated within, quite nervous with goose pimples pricking his skin. The driver quite suddenly pulled on the reins. The horses reared up with their shivering manes. They ended their flop-footed clippity-clop as the carriage was brought to a juddering stop. "Regrets," said the driver, "but that wasn't my fault. I never meant to pull up so hasty. A halt. See, I was just sitting there just driving okay when this girl, she comes running, gets right in my way." "A girl?" Puggly asked. He sat up in his seat. He peered out the window and into the street. Indeed, there she was, a girl running past. She seemed rather troubled. She was running quite fast. "You're right," Puggly said in utter surprise. "If I'm not mistaken, she has tears in her eyes. Perhaps," he called up to the carriage chauffeur, "we ought to go see what was bothering her." "Wish I could," said the driver. "I honestly do. But just look behind us. That's some kind of cue. This road is backed up to the Kingdom of Swish. So what'll I do? Pull a Yui? I wish." Indeed, it was true. There was nowhere to go. Behind them were carriages, all in a row. The driver behind them was shaking his fist. "You lazy, malingering laggards," he hissed. "Get that monstrosity out of the way. Go on then, get moving, and I mean today." "All right," Puggly sighed with a hand on his brow. The girl who he saw must be far away now. He rapped on the roof and said, "Driver, drive on. Whoever she was, she appears to be gone." The driver complied. He was silent above, the reins in the clutch of his leathery glove. Puggly heard only the clop and the clip as the horses were cantering on with the trip. He thought to himself from his seat in the rear, why would some woman be fleeing from here? And what was she wearing? Pajamas, I think, while her feet were adorned with slippers of pink. But his thoughts turned away from the girl and her fate when the driver pulled up to the palace's gate. His carriage ablaze in the Spiffian light, Prince Puggly was suddenly frozen in fright. He felt timid and doubtful, incredibly shy. He peeked from his window with only one eye. A lump started growing at the back of his throat, for here were the gardens, the turrets, the moat. With one look at the palace, he said, "Holy cow!" This was different from Spud. That was obvious now. Every guest looked so cool. They seemed so at ease, while Puggly felt nauseous and weak in the knees. It made him feel different, unworthy and plain, as bare and exposed as a worm in the rain. "No," Puggly whispered. "I can't go in there. They'll never accept me," he thought in despair. "Driver," he called, "take me back where I'm from. I'm out of my league. I should never have come." "Now wait," said the driver. "So at least try to get out. It's a party. There's no time to sit here and pout. I mean, sure, our kingdom's not stylish or rich. Our clothes are peculiar and sometimes they itch. But Puggly, your highness, with all due respect, you might need to get that head of yours checked. Don't forget who you are. You're the one we all chose. We chose you, Prince Puggly, because of your clothes." So despite what you're thinking, you belong here tonight. You're a prince, and besides, they invited you, right? Puggly sat and unfolded the invite once more. He looked down at the Spudlian clothes that he wore. He's right, Puggly thought. I belong here, I do, from the tip of my crown to the sole of my shoe. I've no need to worry, I've no need to wince. My clothing, quite rightly, is fit for a prince. So when Puggly stepped out, he was preening and proud, in spite of the shrieks from the gathering crowd. Who is that? They called out. What a fashionless mess. What a boob, what a schlub. Like, where's the finesse? Look at those stockings, one orange, one green. That's the worst sense of fashion that we've ever seen. But the wig, said a voice. That wig is the worst. What is that? A rat? The thing must be cursed. The woman who uttered those muttering words had a fluttering voice like the chirping of birds. She wasn't quite old and she wasn't quite young. She was staring disgusted and clucking her tongue. But in spite of a face that was cranky and cross, her clothes had a radiant, shimmering gloss. The threads of her dress, every glimmering stitch, was stylish and perfect and regal and rich. Her skirt was in layers, this was very in style, while her wig was pinned up in a delicate pile. Her hems had been daubed in the subtlest dye, and her jewelry twinkled like stars in the sky. When the crowd saw her coming, they parted and bowed. They were stooping as low as their bodies allowed. It was clear from her clothing so carefully sewed. She was hip, she was cool, she was so a la mode. Who was this woman? I'll bet you know. This person, of course, was Miss Ruby LaRue, the finest of fashion designers around. She looked at Prince Puggly, however, and frowned. What a wig! She cried out. What a man! What a mess! What unstylish, unsightly, unseemly excess! She covered her mouth with the silk of her scarf. Oh, fetch me a bucket! I think I might barf! It seemed so indeed. She heaved and she retched, and as she requested, a bucket was fetched. But there was no puke, she vomited not, despite being given a vomiting pot. If she barfed after all, she would look like a freak. Spewing up lunch was so very last week. That outfit, she cried, it boggles the mind. If I look any more, I think I'll go blind. Who are you? She asked. You must tell us your name. I need to know who would wear something so lame. Hearing those insults, poor Puggly was flushed, his spirits deflated, his confidence crushed. A million misgivings were filling his brain, but finding some courage, he tried to explain. I'm a prince, he insisted. I'm new on the scene, so sure I might come off a little bit green, but I'm in the right place. I don't mean to boast, but they sent me an invite. It came in the post. Give that to me, snapped Ruby LaRue. Why would anyone ever have sent one to you? She grabbed the poor prince by the thin of his wrist and wrangled the invite from out of his fist. You realize, she sneered, you can never be swish when you're wearing a tie that is shaped like a fish. No, it is clear there has been a mistake. You're a fraud, I'm afraid. This invite's a fake. No, Puggly cried. I had it all checked. The address, the postage, it was all correct. Perhaps, Ruby smiled, or so it would seem, but you're clearly mistaken and in the extreme. But let us be certain, let us compare your invite with mine. I think that is fair. And oh, aren't we lucky? I have mine right here. She gently produced it from within her brassiere. Now we shall see who is wrong, who is right, or more, to be more precise, who is the liar tonight. She inspected the paper for a moment or two. Aha, she cried out, the liar is you. It can't be, was Puggly's insistent reply. I'm telling the truth. I would never lie. But you are, Ruby muttered. I knew it all along. This glue is too gummy. The folds are all wrong. Just look, she said Puggly. Any half-wit could see. Your invite's been forged unequivocally. The paper's too thin. Just look how it droops. And this curlicure here, why, there's too many loops. Moreover, it's sealed with inferior wax. Good sir, are these not irrefutable facts? But my name, Puggly whispered. On the envelope, see? Prince Puggly, it says. That is really me. He reached out and said, please give it back. Ruby, however, gave his hand a great smack. and Puggly was forced to watch in dismay as she tore up his invite and threw it away. The wind took the bits with a whoosh and a whiff and sent them all fluttering over the cliff. "No!" Puggly whimpered. He threw his arms wide. "Why did you do that? How could you?" he cried. "Why?" asked one guest. "What are you, an ape? It's because of those breeches, because of that cape." "That's right," said another. "We all here concur. It's because of that tie and that cardigan, sir." "On your knee," said another. "There's a corduroy patch, and your stockings, you boob, they don't even match." "Those buttons!" cried everyone. "They're wooden, you hear? Wood hasn't been in since June of last year. Not to mention your crown. What an utter disgrace. Let's be honest. It looks like a frisbee from space." "Then there's your sleeves. Just look at that cuff. Boy, you'd be better off bare, in the buff. To sum up, that outfit isn't fit for a pig. But mostly, you twit, it's because of that wig." Puggly said nothing. He swayed on his feet. He felt useless, unwanted, quite obsolete. He blinked only once, then he uttered a sigh. "Oh," he said slowly, "so now I know why." Then he turned from the crowd in the Palace of Spiff, and though both his legs felt empty and stiff, he stumbled away looking ghostly and frail, his eyes glazing over, his face going pale. His driver awaited by the drawbridge out front. He had heard how his prince had suffered the brunt of so many taunts and so many jeers. He saw that the eyes of his prince were in tears. "Come on," said the driver. "I think we should go. That Ruby's a wacko. She's crazy, you know." He opened the door of the carriage's cab, but Puggly just stood there, dreary and drab, as empty and pale as the palace's wall. He didn't climb into the carriage at all. "No," he said softly, "Miss Ruby was right. I'm simply not stylish enough for tonight. I thought I liked parties and dancing and stuff, but now I've decided these parties are rough. They make you feel awful, but at least now I know what happens at parties when you actually go. Anyway, they were right. Just look how I dress. If the clothes make the man, then I've made a mess." He looked down at his feet. He closed both his eyes. Then he took off his crown, and with the deepest of sighs, he handed it back to the driver and said, "This crown, I believe, was too good for my head." He followed those words with the tiniest smile. "I think someone else should be prince for a while." And with that, poor old Puggly just wandered away, like a ship gone adrift or a dog gone astray. All right, boys and girls, we're going to stop here. Stay tuned for tomorrow's chapter. Have a great day.